Jeff Holland. I'm the Director of Conservation for the Center for the Conservation of Tropical Ungulates in Florida. It's a private facility. And I'm a scientific advisor with CCCI, and been working with Juan for over 10 years now, I think, on Chaco conservation. So, and I formerly used to be curator mammals at the LA Zoo for 34 years.
Actually, I think the first time we met was almost 20 years ago, when I was all by myself reintroducing Chaco and Tapirs to the wild.
Yes, you're right. Yes, yeah.
In a really remote area, it was wonderful. I was the only person there for miles and miles and miles. And I think, can you all see my screen? I think I have a little thing there on top, but hopefully you will still be able to read and see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
We can see it.
So I am Dr. Juan Campos. I am currently an assistant professor in the University of Florida in the College of Veterinary Large Animal Clinical Science and in the Department of Conservation, Ecology, and Wildlife Ecology and Conservation. Sorry. But for many years, I was the executive director of the Chaco Center for Conservation and Research. And I grew up in the Chaco region that I'm gonna show you about. And it's a wonderful, wonderful place in terms of animals biodiversity. So should we go ahead? I'll show you. I really would like to show you a little bit. I mean, being able to see something is always much better than just talking about it, right? So here's a tapir. This is tapir that we call on one of our cameras. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Maybe it's going to be really small, but as you can see, this animal has scratch and wounds, which is because the Chaco forest is really thick, and that can really help us identify some of the animals. So our project, like I said, is to look at the health and the ecology of the tapir in the Chaco, in the central Chaco of Paraguay. Where is Paraguay located? Because it's a small country that most of the time people don't ever heard about it. Paraguay is located right here. It's the heart of South America, right in the center. It has no ocean, so it's landlocked. Paraguay, this is a map of Paraguay, and as you can see, the country is divided by a big river in two very distinct ecoregions. And Paraguay actually is the only country in all the Americas that has two official languages. It's the only country that has a Native American language as official language. So in Paraguay, we speak Spanish and Guarani. 95% of the people speak more Guarani than Spanish. And it was because of the Guarani Indians made an agreement and were friendly to the Spanish. So that's how our culture started. And the capital city of Paraguay is Asunción, that you see right here. And is one of the oldest cities of South America. It was founded in 1537. So I'm going to be talking about this region in this area. This is called the Paraguayan Chaco, all this region here to the north. And that's where this research is located. Again, I want to show you this, like you see here, this is the Chaco region. One of the things that makes the Chaco region so perfect for animals, and it has remained like that for a really long time, is that the country of Paraguay right now has around 7 million people. 98% of the population lives on the Oriental region, which is this area here. Only 2% lives in the Chaco, and from that 2%, most of them tend to live near the river. So very few people still around here. But that has not stopped development, as I will show you a little bit ahead. The Chaco region is divided in two very distinct areas. One is the light green that you see here that we call the low Chaco. The low Chaco is, this picture is it's a picture of the low Chaco, and the low Chaco is an area that's mostly natural grasslands with lots of palm trees, rivers, streams. Is very different than the darker area, the brown area that you see here, which we call also the dry Chaco. It's also called the central north Chaco. Our research area is in the dry Chaco area. And it looks like this. This is a typical picture, like the one I had behind me before. So the Chaco of Paraguay is actually, the Chaco region of South America is pretty big. It incorporates Argentina. So this is the border of Paraguay that you see here. And as you can see, the map changed a little bit, but the dark green again is the low Chaco. The lighter green is the dry Chaco. And as you can see, there's a big chunk of it in Argentina, a little bit also in Bolivia, and a little bit of what expanded of the Chaco and near the Pantanal region in Brazil. But from Argentina and Bolivia, the Paraguayan Chaco was the one that was, and I say was because with the current development, I think probably that has changed. It used to be the most well-conserved Chaco area of South America. The Chaco is pretty big. It's 1.3 million square kilometers, so around 500,000 square miles. It's pretty big. This is one of the big problems, if I can say problems, in the Chaco, the development. Mostly of the development is cattle ranching. Cattle ranching is very big in Paraguay. Paraguay has, like I said, 7 million people, but it has around 14 million cattle. So a lot of cattle in Paraguay, and that tends to expand all the time, and that's what put in a lot of pressure to the Chaco. And so it's a big challenge. This is Chaco that has been turned into pasture land, the one below. The low Chaco, like I said, lots of natural palm, natural grasslands, lots of biodiversity that's related to the water, lots of birds, lots of amphibians, insects, all those things that you expect where there's a lot of water. And in the low Chaco, you can find tamandua. They're very common. You see them all around. Also giant anteaters are very common in that area. Also in the dry Chacos, you will see. So those are some of the things. And like I said, the low Chaco has streams, and that's generally where you find streams that are full of these guys. And these are piranhas. Piranhas, actually, it's a word that comes from the Guarani language, that pira means fish, aña means devil. So piranha, it's actually devilfish. It comes from the Guarani language. And as I was mentioning a little bit ahead, lots of the names of animals, of mammals, actually have come directly from Guarani. So it makes me really proud to be a Paraguayan and to speak the Guarani language. This is a caiman that's also found in the low Chaco. Caiman laterostris is a species that's in danger of extinction as well. So going now to the dry Chaco, that's more important for us now, is this area that you see here, all the brown area. Completely different story. The dry Chaco looks a picture. If you take a picture of the forest, typical dry forest Chaco, it's like this: really dense forest, lots of spines, lots of cactus, really dense, really difficult to go through. Most of the animal encounters, or when people see animals, generally it's in a road, or it's something that has been opened, because walking through the Chaco is really difficult to spot animals. In the central Chaco also, that's where the Chaco Center of Conservation and Research is located. That's where the Chacoan peccary, Chacoan peccary breeding station is located. That's where we're breeding the Chacoan peccary with very success. One of our future projects is starting to reintroduce these animals, but that has been a little bit complicated because the development is going so fast that we can't reintroduce these animals because we don't know if that forest is going to be there 2, 3, 1 year later. So that has been challenging. In the Chaco Center, it's a unique place because it's one of the few places in the world where we have the 3 species of peccaries: Chacoan peccary, color peccary, white-lipped peccaries, all in the same habitat. And this is, let me see if this will play. This is one of the problems that we're having right now in the Chaco. This is what's going out through all the Chaco, is dozers clearing land for pasture, for cattle ranching. And this is how a dozer works in the Chaco. This machine works 24 hours a day. It never stops. It only stops to get refueled, change drivers, and it continues 24 hours a day. The last estimate was that the Chaco is losing around 1 hectare per day. Sorry, 1 hectare per hour, not per day. And just look how fast this machine clears the land. It's really sad to see. See, and sorry, this is a little, you're gonna have to look closely, but I placed together how the deforestation is advancing in the Chaco, and this is just 2000 to 2006. To now we're 2020, so things have changed a lot. But I just want you to see it starts with 2000, and it advances it all the way up to 2016, and you see how fast the development is going on. All the dark green areas is forest. The lighter green is the areas that has been cleared. So all this has been cleared already. And you can see how it's advancing. Here are the years in the top left corner. And it's just incredible how fast the cattle ranching is expanding in the Chaco. A closer view from the sky of those pasture lands that you saw in the satellite image looks like this. So this was all pristine forest. Like here, where you see these are wind blockers that they leave because the wind is pretty strong in the Chaco. So they leave these wind blocks, but as you can see, it's, you know, almost absolutely everything disappears. This is then seeded with grass, and as Jeff pointed out, one of the things that every cattle ranch has are ponds. So as soon as a cattle ranch gets established in the Chaco, first thing they do is build ponds, of course, clear the forest, grow grass, and clear the ponds so that cattle can move in. This is another picture of an aerial picture of an area that was just cleared. And here you can still see these lines are the forest that the dozers pushed here, and these later on when they're dry, they're burned. So sadly, not even the wood it's taken advantage of. And this is how a new ranch looks. Just imagine all the animals fleeing or dying with this traumatic, you know, deforestation. Going down to our project, I'm going to show you the next picture. Again, here it shows 2000. So the dark brown are the pasture lands that were already established before 2000. And here is a picture of 2015. The red are all new pasture lands. Just look how it expanded. For our research site, the next picture is going to be a little larger, but it's going to incorporate this area here that you see in this rectangle or square, yellow square, which incorporates this. And what I want to show, what you see in white is also deforested. It's cattle ranching, it's pasture land. It just shows as white because it was clear before 2000. All the pink, the dark pink that you see are pasture lands that were introduced after 2000. So this white area is also all pasture land. Our two sites are these. One site here near the city of Philadelphia, this is where the Chaco Center is. And as you can see, it has a little bit remaining of forest in some areas. It has new pasture, new areas that were clear, new pasture lands. And the white, like I said, is also older cleared forest. The second site is this here. All this green area is actually one ranch that has 50,000 hectares. And as you can see, only a little bit of it has been developed. Most of it is still pristine Chaco. And this is the area that we want to compare to the much more developed area here in the central Chaco. So this is all the central Chaco. The idea with the project and with this research is, of course, to set up wildlife cameras so that we can take images of all the animals, but our species of interest for this research is mainly tapir, but we're going to get a lot of information of all these other species as well. So with that, we would like to look at the community, the occupancy rate and the species richness that we see in that area, both areas, comparing both areas. Which species are more common in the developed areas, which species are almost not even seen in thick forest, pristine areas, right? Co-occurrence, which species interact together in these different ecosystems, and also try to estimate the density of the animals. Like Jeff said, we were expecting to see 1 or 2 or maybe 5 tapirs, but it turned out that we're seeing a lot more tapirs in these developed areas, which is a little bit unexpected. And with that, we can look at resource selection. We can understand better connectivity because we're going to have animals that will have radio transmitters, so we can better understand their movement, their home range, and all those different factors. Spatial temporal is important because, like I said, the Chaco has very distinct dry and wet season. The wet season generally starts November and it ends around February. That's it coincides with the summer. I forgot to mention this, but one of the other names of the Chaco region is also green hell. So that's why there's not a lot of people like to live in green hell. There's very few people because during the summer, it's not unusual for temperatures to reach 47 Celsius, which is around what, 116 Fahrenheit, with 80 to 90% humidity. And then on the other hand, during the winter, the southern winter, which is June to August, we have the dry season. So it's very, very dry during that season. So that's why understanding the resource selection during those 2 very drastic dry and wet season is also going to be very interesting. So some of the data that we're really looking forward and we really appreciate the help that you all are going to give us is some of the data that, for example, each camera has its ID and number. The time of day is going to be very important when we do the analysis to understand when animals are moving, at what time. Also the temperature, which is, it will show up. It's very important to understand how temperature influences animal movement. Weather, sometimes it's difficult, but of course, if it's raining, you can tell by a picture that it's raining, right? But the Chaco also has really strong winds that sometimes you will be able to tell if there was a strong wind. And of course, the species that you find and the activity. If you see lots of species moving and what they're doing. Sometimes we had some pictures of several pumas, and it seemed like there was a female that was in heat. So sometimes we have seen in cameras armadillos. There are female armadillos. We see one female armadillo pass, and then we see 10 armadillos behind her on the consecutive pictures. So armadillos are very interesting animals that when the female is in heat, they can smell it from a really long distance, and it's not unusual to see many armadillos pass by chasing that female. So just to show you a little bit of the data that will be very important for us. And now I want to go ahead and show you some of the species that you are likely to see. In the Toledo area, that's where our first site, that's the developed area. The last time I was able to see, or we were able to catch or see tracks, signs of jaguar has been probably around 7 years ago. So in that area, they have been really heavily persecuted because it's not unusual for jaguars to kill cattle, and they can kill from calves to large steers and cows when they're really like this one. That's a really strong, big animal. But there's lots of pumas, so you're very likely to see pumas in that area. They seem to adapt much better to development for some reason. You will see jaguarotes, Jeffrey's cats. There's many other species also that you are likely to see. you are likely to see the 3 species of peccaries. We have the 3 species, so the Chacoan, the color peccary, and white-lipped peccaries are in the area, so you're likely to see them. It will be really important to record, for example, if you have a picture and you see a Chacoan peccary with a little baby, because that will help us to see the time that they give birth. Of course, tapirs, hopefully you'll see them in the pictures, that's the whole idea. Then tapirs are just wonderful, magical creatures. You will see also giant anteaters and also tamandua in less extent, but there are also tamandua in that region. Fox, you're likely to find 2 types of fox. This is the crab-eating fox, and this is the Asara fox. And you can see sometimes a little bit challenging to identify, to break them apart. But crab-eating fox are lower, they have shorter legs, and they're a little bit thicker. And not as red as the Asara fox that you see here below. They tend to have a longer legs, and they're a little bit more reddish. We would love to be able to find a picture that has this guy, the giant armadillo. We have seen tracks and we have seen signs, old signs of giant armadillo in that area, but we've never been able to find fresh tracks or a picture of a giant armadillo. But there is a chance that you guys can spot a giant armadillo. The Chaco has 7 different species of armadillo. This is the hairy armadillo. They're not very big. To see them, it'll be a little bit difficult to tell them apart from this guy here, which is, I think, Caryophytus velosus and velerosus. They look very similar, but generally, these armadillos come out at siesta time. So from 12 to around 3 in noontime, when it's really, really hot, that's when these armadillos tend to come out. We have the 3-banded armadillos that they're probably going to be on the pictures as well. Cavazos chacoensis, it's a really rare armadillo that's only found in the Chaco region, and it actually looks, this is probably one of the few pictures that there is out there that I took of cavazos with a little baby. And they look like miniature giant armadillos. Lots of people confuses them. Sometimes people will find them dead on the roads, and they say, we found a giant armadillo. It's actually a Cavazos chacoensis. They almost a miniature replica of a giant armadillo. 7 bandits, they're pretty common, and 9 bandits are not that common in that area because they tend to live more in the low Chaco, more humid areas. Like I see them here all the time in my yard in Florida. Also, these guys, we've seen him in the Toledo area in our research in our site. This is the blind pink, I think hairy armadillo, blind hairy armadillo. They live underground most of their lives. They're very rare, really difficult to spot, but sometimes after big rains, they come out and maybe we'll have a chance of seeing one in a picture. There's a chance also to see some TD monkeys. They're not that common, they're not that prevalent, they're really difficult to spot. Generally, the few times that I've seen them in that area have been animals that I think that were moving around or moving from one side to another. They're not very common, but on the other hand, there's a chance that we will see these guys are around, and this is the owl monkeys. So if we have a really good luck, maybe there's a chance that one of our cameras can catch one of these owl monkeys. They're up in the tree, so it'll be a little bit difficult, but it'll be wonderful to see them. There are many species of rodents, of small rodents, but in particular, this is it's actually not a rodent, it's a marsupial. So this is the mouse opossum that's also found in the Chaco. So it'll be interesting to see when they're coming out, what's happening, if we happen to catch them on the cameras. This is a tuco tuco. Tuco tuco looks like a prairie dog with steroids. It's the Tenomyces bolivianis, and they're very common in the area. Hopefully we'll be able to catch some too. One bird that I really like because it just looks like the cartoon Roadrunner is the Seriamas. So Seriamas, the black leg and the red leg Seriamas, we have both of them in that area. They're pretty common, and these birds are incredibly curious. So, and they, for some reason, they know exactly what's just showed up or what's new in the area that where they live. So generally, when we set up a camera, the first thing we see is a cerama looking at the camera because they can spot it, they know. So you're very likely to see these guys too in the pictures. And then we have the only species of deer that we have in the Chaco is the Masama wasubira. And here you can see a male. This is a female. And males don't have big antlers. They just have two little antlers like horns, more like a goat horn. This one has a broken one. And what makes it interesting is that they don't shed their antlers every year. They can have it on for several years, 4, 5, 6 years, and then shed it. There's really no study to explain or that has, detailedly explained when they shed, when they know. In the past, it was even thought that they were permanent, but it was found out that they do shed them, but nobody knows exactly when. They can have it for many years. These are things that I just wanted to show that you're very unlikely to probably spot, but if we have some of the pictures are from the rainy season, the Chaco has an immense diversity in frogs and toads. Some of them are incredibly beautiful, like the one here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. This one, Leptodactylus, is actually a predator frog. We call it the jaguar frog. It's pretty big. It's probably 5 to 6 inches big. And it's a frog that doesn't really jump. They walk like a predator, and they feed on they eat other frogs. But then there are many different frogs. Philomedusas are very common. Big toes, Rhinella. We have aquatic frogs. Even though the Chaco can be extremely dry, most of these frogs just will burrow underground, and after the rains they'll come out, and after the big first rains there's an explosion of amphibians, insects, and everything. One of the frogs that I really like is this frog that you see here to the left, this really light green frog, and it's called the paradox frog, because if you can see below, I know it's a little small, this is a tadpole, and the tadpole is bigger than the actual frog. So it's very, very interesting. So maybe you'll be able to catch some of these frogs in the cameras as well. Turtles, the same thing. It's very dry, but during the rainy season, you can find turtles like this Scorpioides. There are many bats. Bats is one thing that needs to be studied in the Chaco. Nobody has, I think the last really intense study of bats in the Chaco was in the 60s. There's lots of bats. We have both species of vampire bats in the Chaco. There's Modus rotundus, and the other one is, I don't remember exactly the name, but it's the one that only feeds on birds. This one is, I think, a Taradidia brasiliensis, very common bat. Also, lots of snakes. There's a chance that you will see some snakes. This is the boa, the Chaco boa, that they can grow up to 3 meters long. Rattlesnakes are pretty common. Botrops newides, also poisonous snake that is very common. Very aggressive snakes. This snake is actually, people are really scared of it because this snake, when it sees you, it chases you. It's not afraid at all of humans. There are some false coral snakes that maybe we'll catch in the cameras as well. And we have one species of real coral snake. This one we call captain snake, Leophis. It's a snake that generally comes after the big rains, and it feeds on amphibians. So maybe we'll catch them too. We have Ambiobaster, which is a lizard, legless lizard that also shows up after the rains. I don't know if we'll be able to find them, but they'll be little. And then we have 2 species of tegu lizards. And again, here, tegu means tegu, the species. That's the Guarani word for the species. So in Guarani, we say Teyu. It's the same as the name that everybody knows it from. I apologize, the name has changed, and I don't know the new name. Species names change all the time, so I apologize for not being updated on that. But we have two species. This used to be the Tawinsis, and we had the other ones that's Rufens, I think. That's the more reddish Teyu lizard. So both of them are likely to show up on cameras as well. There's also a chance that maybe we'll catch some tarantulas. They're very common. They're all over in the Chaco. And maybe we will catch, and other insects, other large insects that maybe the cameras will catch as well. Big scorpions are confound. And with that, I don't know, any questions? I think I went through it super fast, but just to give you an idea and get you encouraged of wanting to look at the pictures of. Okay, let's look at tapirs, and we have two sites. One that we picked, it's in the area of influence of the Chaco Center in Conservation. That's where the Chacoan Peccary captive breeding project is also located. And that area has been heavily developed almost for the past 20 years. So there's lots of pasture lands, lots of cattle ranching. There are still remaining islands of forest, around 500 hectares, so that'll be around 800 acres. Big, some smaller, some a little bit bigger. But the second site is actually it's a ranch that has 50,000 hectares of Chaco, and only 3,000 of that 50,000 has been developed to pasture. So it's almost practically pristine forest. And we want to capture animals there, use the cameras there as well, and compare if we see any differences between the tapirs in a really pristine Chaco forest, and how does that change with tapirs that are more in developed areas. Research we established two areas. So one of the things that we wanted to do is first, okay, when we trap the tapirs, look at their health, see what bacteria, what parasites, what they have, what they're exposed to, because nobody knows. And on the other hand, we want to look at the ecology, understand better how they adapt and how they live in the Chaco, how big is their habitat, when do they reproduce, the population, all those questions are the things that we want to look into. And that's why it's important that we try to identify the unique animals. And in the Chaco, because it's really thick, thorny forest, generally tapirs will have scar wounds that can help us identify some of the animals. But yeah, mostly that is what we ran through. But we're learning. I think we're up in the learn. One of our hypotheses was that tapirs in developed areas where there isn't a really high hunting pressure, our hypothesis was that tapirs will be mostly secluded or stay using mostly just the forest. In compare, because the rest of the pristine Chaco is thick forest. There's almost no natural opening. So our hypothesis is to see that we expect to see that tapirs in more developed areas really need the forest and that they're remaining in the forest. Right now already with this one individual, we're seeing that that's absolutely not the case. And with our preliminary data from this animal, we're seeing that he's spending 65% of his time, at least the location points that we have captured from him, in open pasture lands, and using ponds in open pasture lands, and also feeding from cornfields. So that's a little bit of, it answers a little bit of that one hypothesis, and tells us that they seem to be adapting. Of course, it's just one animal. We need a lot more animals to have a reliable information.
I think the abundance of tapirs we originally thought would be low in the developed areas, but through the camera traps, what appears to be is that they're actually fairly abundant. And the thought is that even though there's development going on, as Juan pointed out, when they develop pastures, they always put in ponds. So there's a lot more water around than there normally would be. and that actually may be aiding the tapir population. So which was very different from what we originally were thinking.
Yeah. And from the health perspective, we're doing all the testing. Well, we will be doing when we have the other side is to compare if we see any differences in terms of possible pathogens that tapirs are exposed to when they're in a more developed area and in closer relation to cattle, sheep, goats, and then compared to areas that's much more pristine where there's almost no cattle or human influence at all. This is be able to estimate population, be able to better understand the ecology of tapirs in developed and non-developed areas. And the main objective is being able to have enough information to work with the government and let them know that give them this information, and with that have management plans for the species in the Chaco region. We need to have management plans for the species and talk with farmers and neighbors and let them know that that other animals are probably also using their ponds and their pasture lands, and that tapirs are very important. Tapirs are one of them to try to conserve the species, because we're really worried that the reproduction rate of tapirs is really slow. So we need to take care and really protect the animals that are there.
The other thing that's really important as you go through the photos of the camera trap is what you're not seeing, because that will be a big indication to us of what species are being affected negatively by the development. I mean, we already have suspicions that the tagua are being extremely affected by the development, because although we see them still, we're rarely seeing them as compared to other species. So what you don't see is really, really important also.